Hi everybody, today I'm going to be teaching you how to set up a 3x3 Rubik's Cube. So let's get right into the video. So today I'm going to be teaching you how to set up this cube, the GMS 3x3. Now the reason I'm using this cube is because out of the box this is really bad. So as you can see, the corner cutting is under 45, and I really want to make this a lot better because I do like the feeling, but it's just very dry and the corner cutting's pretty bad. So anyway, I will be teaching you how to set up this. So for the lubes you're going to need, I am using weight 5 for the core lubricant. You do not have to do this if you do not hear spring noise, which I will explain a little later in the video, but it can be something that's just, I guess, pretty heavy, like Vortex or Max Command or Fleet. I think it's Command, I'm not sure. Or you can use like Traxxas 50K or just some lube that's not like premium and that's kind of like thicker. I would recommend. Obviously you could use any of these, but these are more expensive. And here's just the rest of my lubes. You don't have to use these. So if you're setting up a puzzle that you know is very fast, you might not want to use Lunar if you don't have it. But if you have a bunch of these lubes, and you can combine them together to make wheels, so you don't need to have all of these lubes. So I have Martian, Controlius, Nebula, and Lunar. I have a feeling I will not be using a Lunar because the GMS is already very fast. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to disassemble the puzzle, and there's multiple ways of doing it. Now, one thing you want to do before that is listen and see if you hear any weird spring noise. Now, I don't hear too much in this, but I think there probably is some. An example of spring noise would be this. As you can see, when I'm turning this layer, there is some spring noise. So if you hear this, you want to lube it, but I just like to lube all the springs just because on most cubes you will hear some spring noise. So if you aren't going to lube it, what you're going to want to do is, in this case I can't really pull out a piece, you're going to want to twist it 45 degrees and then pull out an edge. Now you might have to loosen some sides, but it doesn't really matter, we'll fix the tensions later. But for me, since I want to do that, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to grab a screwdriver. I have a YJ screwdriver, but they come in like more expensive cubes, or if you get like the RS3M or Maylong series, they should come with one. So all you have to do here is, I will quickly show if you don't want to do the springs, but you're just going to kind of loosen it. Now if you aren't lubricating the springs, you might not want to do this, but just tighten it however much you loosened it. Still can't get a piece out, so I'm going to loosen the green side too, because since the piece is coming from both sides, however much you loosen it by, once you can get the piece out, just tighten it. Now obviously I'm not going to do that because I don't care about the tension since I'm lubricating everything. So anyway, if you're not going to do that, all you have to do, it's pretty fun and satisfying in my opinion, is just unscrew this as much as you can until the whole layer comes off. And you can do this obviously when the cube is completely assembled if you want. Okay, anyway, once you're done, all you do is basically just lift everything off, and it looks really satisfying in my opinion, so you can see the core. But we're going to make sure to keep whatever pieces you took off. So as you can see here, we have the screw and the spring. Some cubes may have washers. It looks like this one doesn't, but you're going to want to sort. So put these pieces in one pile. Recommend putting the center caps in one pile also, and the screw and spring together in one pile. And for the rest of these, you can just sort them into corners and edges, which I will do right now. And once you're done with this, it should be pretty easy to get off. Obviously you're going to have to unscrew the rest, but I would recommend taking out the pieces first. So you can just take them out like this. You've got a magnetic cube, the pieces will stick together, and this is the GMS, so obviously it's magnetic. Just kind of pull it apart, but if you're making piles, obviously don't take it out too fast. So I know you can't see, but I have a bunch of other piles of other things. So now once it's done, you're just going to unscrew the other 5 ones and take the center caps off. So anyway, once your cube is broken down, it will just be like a core. And please don't freak out to say that your cube's broken, because it's really not, and you just have to repeat the same steps. But what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to lubricate the springs and the screws, and we're going to put them back in here and then attach this to the core, and we're going to do that for all 6 sides, and then we're going to tension it while doing that. Now I would recommend using a towel while doing this, so that way I don't get it on anything, because you might get lube on certain things. So I'm going to be using a red towel, so that way I don't get lube on my desk, but you will most likely get lube on your hands. So I'm just going to teach you how to lube. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the spring, and what I like to do is take the spring off, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to kind of go around the end of the screw and squeeze a little bit on a thin layer, I would say, You don't want to do too much because it's wasting it. This is pretty important so you don't hear any spring noise. And you're going to do is kind of just go along the screw with the weight 5 or whatever other you're using. It doesn't really matter. And you just kind of go along to make sure you're getting every part of the screw, even the top here. And then after that, what I like to do is put the spring on the screw. And then I like to go around the spring and just put lubricant on the outside. Now this is also pretty important to make sure that you don't hear any spring noise. This is obviously where your hands are going to get dirty. So anyway, here I have a center cap. This is a yellow one. I'm just going to stick this through here, get my core, and then I'm going to stick it in here. And then I'm just going to tighten it. So first I just want to make sure that it's not going to come out. So it's not going to come out. And at this point we're going to tension it. So you're going to want to do it to a certain point. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it to the end of whatever this bumpy part is, and then I will do it for every side so that way it's even. Okay, so this is how tight I'm going to tension it. As you can see, there's very little of what I see with the rough part, and that's what I'm going to do for every side. So I'm just going to pick a random screw next, and you have to make sure you get the color scheme right. So what I'm going to do is do white since it's opposite yellow. You can put any random color, but what you need to know is if you have it so yellow's facing up, it goes orange, blue, red, and then green, and I will give examples of how the color scheme should look. So anyway, I'm just going to do it for all the rest of the centers, and I will get back to you once I'm done with that, and I will tell you a couple tips in between. Another thing that you may want to do is what I would recommend doing to make sure that you don't have to do the spring part again is pulling these out and making sure that you can't hear any noise. So I definitely can't hear any noise. You're going to want to pull these out so that the spring gets completely in and that you really feel the lube when you're turning it. Now, if you do hear some spring noise while you're lubricating the springs when you go like this and twist it, then what you're going to want to do is just put a thin layer around the spring and it should fix the issue. Okay, so I just finished with my fourth one, and now we're going to get to color scheme. So if anybody can think of a good way of remembering the color scheme, put it in the comments, and the first one to do it will get pinned. So if you do it, you will get pinned. And so all I remember when I saw 4x4, I have to remember this, or 6x6, is that when yellow's facing up, it goes red, green, orange, and then blue. So you see I have green, and then after green, I know goes orange. So here would not be correct. So what I'm going to do is put it here. Okay, so I finished wiping off everything, and I already put the weight 5 back, but for the tip, I would recommend kind of wiping against the towel because it could leave some lube on wherever you put it. So I'm just going to wipe it against the towel and make sure that you don't hear any spring noise when moving the core, so I don't hear any. If you do, you're going to want to do what I said earlier in the video, put some under here. The next thing we're going to do is wipe everything down. So we're going to wipe the corners, the edges, the core pieces, and the actual core. Now you could wipe the core obviously before you put the center caps on. Obviously you could wipe the core before you put the center pieces on, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think. Anyway, you just kind of want to get around the center pieces, make sure to get everywhere where they might touch, and then make sure to get the core along with it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be pretty much so there's not very much factory lube. Then for the edges, what you can do is edges look pretty different depending on the cube, but just try to wipe everywhere pretty much where it will touch other pieces. So I'm just kind of wiping around where I think it will touch, but you don't really have to get in here because it won't really touch so much. Just wipe around where you can reach with the towel. And then for corners, kind of just the same thing. They're easier in my opinion. You just kind of wipe around like this part if you have it and on where it will touch other pieces. And I will see you once I'm done wiping everything down. Okay, so now that I'm done wiping off the pieces, I would recommend you do it even if your pieces don't really feel lubed like mine really don't. But what we're going to do now is we're going to put the cube together. So your cube might not have colored center pieces, and in this case what you can just do is you can kind of think about where the corners and edges go and then see if they match up. If it does have colored pieces, it makes it a bit easier. So if you want a full assembly tutorial, check out the card in the top right corner, but I would just be going through it very briefly. So the first thing that I do is I just put 2 of one colored edges so you see they match up with their centers, and I would recommend putting it together solved because if you put it together scrambled, then it may be impossible to solve and you might have to take out pieces. So I'm just going to put it together solved. Next, you just make 1/8 of the cube, and magnets should help a little bit. bit when you place the pieces in if you have magnets in your cube. And after that, you put another edge that matches with 2 centers. In this case, I just chose the white side to put the edges on. Then after that, you just build another corner section up here. And you put in the 4th edge for one side. And you put in the 4th edge for one side. And you build up one of the corner sections like this. And you just put in the corner for the other corner section, not the edge, because it makes it easier to finish the cube if you don't put the edge in. And you basically just put the edges in coming from here, and it makes it easier again if you leave the extra edge out. And the corners, make sure that it's aligned correctly, make sure that they make a solved cube. Finally, once you have 3 of these top ones left, you're going to put in whatever edge it is that needs to be put in here. You're going to put in your first 2 corners, and then you're going to turn it 45 degrees and then put in the edge. Now you will be taking out the edge again to lube it, but now we have a completely assembled cube. So if you use the same metrics for what I did to make it evenly tensioned, you will notice that it is quite loose in certain cubes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tighten it by like 2 full turns. I would just recommend tightening it by however many turns you think it needs, or just do trial and error until you find something that looks like a tension or feels like something that will not pop. Obviously this will pop, it's way too loose. I will show a good tension later in the video. So I tightened it by 2 full turns, and in my opinion this feels pretty good. As you can see, it's not as tight as it was before, but it's not super loose and it will just like pop. As you can see, corner cutting is definitely a lot easier. I don't think this cube corner cuts great by any means, but it's definitely a lot better. So if you feel like it needs to be tighter, then definitely tighten it. Now, the more you solve, I believe it does get looser. So if you feel like, oh, why does it feel like so much looser, then you can definitely still tighten it. So anyway, once you find a preferred tension, all you have to do is just get the center caps back on. So let me go do that. So once you've done that, then in some cubes the center caps may be a bit harder to get on, but it should look like a fully functional cube and it will have all its centers on. Now, one thing to note is that if you do not like the logo and you can peel it off like this cube, all you have to do is just peel it off. I'm not going to do that because I personally like the logo, but this is just applicable for a few people who do not like the logo. So now we're going to get into lubing, and this is kind of the hardest part to explain because there's definitely not one universal way of doing it. But one thing I like to see is this cube too fast? In this case, definitely yes, it's way too fast. So what I like to do is use some Controlius because it will really slow it down. Now I do have Nebula too, but I don't really like it quite as much. But I also usually like to put a fast lube in because I don't want it to be super slow. So I think it is too fast to use Lunar, but Martian is kind of a good mix that it's pretty fast, but it's not super fast. So I think I'm going to use mostly Controlius and then some Martian. But if you have a really slow cube, then obviously you would want to use a different lube combination, like maybe a tiny bit of Controlius or Nebula and mostly Lunar and Martian. So you're going to do is pretend like you're taking the cube apart, twist it 45 degrees, pull an edge out, and then what you're going to do is also pull a corner out. Then what I like to do is I kind of just like to basically lube everywhere where any of the pieces will touch. So what I like to do is just kind of lube around here and then twist it and then lube here. And what you're going to do is you're just going to put whatever lube you want on whatever combination of edges, and I would recommend taking out the edge and the corner. And what I would recommend doing is basically putting wherever the edge will touch. So I basically just put it anywhere along the edge except on the pieces. Then for the corners, you can put it anywhere along here too. So what I'm going to use is mostly Controlius and some Martian because this cube is very fast and it needs to have control, but I also don't want to spend super long breaking it in, and I just think Martian would help speed it up. Now probably not Lunar because Lunar is a very fast lube and this cube is already very fast. So all you have to do is you're just going to kind of lube around here and then over here. And I would definitely recommend doing the corner first because you're going to put the corner in and then the edge. So I'll just see you once I'm done with that. Okay, and here goes the corner and here goes the edge. Now it may be pretty difficult to get in, as with some cubes more than others when there's lubricant and you can't push as hard because you don't want to get your hands dirty. It went in pretty fast there, but I've had it where it takes a really long time to get in. So anyway, once you're done, you're just going to break it in. You're just going to do a bunch of algorithms. It should start to break in, and if you see that it does need any more of one thing, you can always take out more pieces. So I'm just going to do a couple solves. Now I've done 2 solves on this and I do think it feels pretty good, but I think it needs a bit more control. So what I'm just going to do is open up a spot, and then I'm going to add Controllers. If you don't have Controllers, you can use like Nebula or some other lubes from the cubicle. Just going to drop like maybe 4 drops in, and I probably dropped too much, but then you're just going to break it in more until you feel like it's a pretty good speed, maybe a little slow, but the more you break it in, the better it will get. I'm just going to do another 2 solves. So after doing a bunch more solves, it definitely does feel pretty good. Now, one thing is that your cube may be very lubey. Just going to wipe it off a little bit. And anyway, I hope that helped you set up your cube, and I hope that helped you make your cube maybe from not so good to feeling very good like mine does right now. And I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe, and see everybody later.